The mid-90s was the final years people were unfamiliar with computers. It's hard to picture this, but they were a mystery fantasy device that could do whatever you wanted. I didn't understand what a megahertz, gigahertz, gigabyte back then. For years, shows and movies would throw tech jargon out, and you wouldn't question it. It's the equivalent of someone button mashing a game controller in a movie. Oh, I'm playing a real game? Yeah, right. The only movie that came close to being semi-realistic to what computers could do was war games. Nowadays, if you see someone playing GTA 5 on a computer that's like a stock Dell, you're not gonna buy it. This was also the time where the first boon of virtual reality kicked off with amazing products like Sega VR and the Nintendo's Virtual Boy that want to touch things in games, move stuff with your hands. No, anything that's 3D, people flock to it. X-Files became a huge hit about aliens and weird episodes. Why not make a TV show with computers? That's how VR5 came to be. So about the title, VR, obvious. The 5, or well really, .5, is the 5 senses of the human body. The series stars Sydney Bloom, a telephone line worker who's also a computer hobbyist, hacking together parts and junk she finds from her jobs. She doesn't have that many friends, she's a private person, very standoffish, mainly because of what happened to her family 20 years earlier. Her father Joseph and sister Samantha were killed in a car accident as they were heading to get ice cream. She was the only survivor. The deaths broke her mother, leaving her in a comatose-like state. This all happened due to a mystery man coming over her house and caused an argument with her father, who was involved with developing virtual reality back in the late 70s, along with her mother, played by Deep Space Nine's Kai Wynn herself, Louise Fletcher. It's similar to the Smoking Man story on X-Files. Her life is just her computer and her parrot, who's voiced both by Frank Welker, and a really odd homeless guy called Duncan. Loves to quote philosophy and do weird stuff. By accident, her testing a basic VR headset and 3D program while on a phone somehow combined, sending Sydney and the other person into their subconscious. This advanced VR world is shaped by Sydney's own mind. Her first time in the VR world was caused by her annoying neighbor, played by Penn Jillette, who stupidly parked his car in front of hers. He's basically tormented, falling from the sky, going on a bus while people throw fire at him, and his car being crushed by a roller. The VR world she created is more than just random images and living out fantasies. This world is able to affect people in real life she connected to. It's almost like a hypnotic suggestion. Penn's character cleans and moves his car after all that. He has no memory of the world, but he changed. This allowed Sydney to connect to her mother. She tried her best to free her mind, as well as her partner at work, who was hiding secrets and killing several women. The VR world was able to expose his real personality. This is where the mystery man comes in. She cracked the barrier between the physical and virtual world. Sydney was brought, well, really forced into the same organization that her father was a part of, as a covert ops-like group that stops crimes and other acts. It's basically mixing Flash, Numbers, X-Files, and Diagnosis Murder in one. So what happened to VR5? Take a big guess. Science fiction series in 1995, what was the most common place you landed on? You guessed it, Fox. So of course it was doomed. I will say it's not perfect. The pilot episode was all over the place. It felt like it was supposed to be a 2-hour pilot crammed into one. They try to flesh out the VR. We get a few other known actors like Robert Picardo from Star Trek playing a VR engineer. You know, this series wouldn't exist today. There would be too many problems with the tech, but back then, the concept of the series were confusing, so things were allowed. But you got it eventually. I sat down and watched the episodes recently. I understood the story right away, but when it was new, it took like 5 or 6 episodes. Fox didn't help. It was put on in a pretty crummy time slot. There were other shows on at the time, so I had to pick and choose. So VR5 kept getting pushed to the side. What made the situation more complicated? The show was fairly expensive. The CG for the regular VR stuff added cost. Then with the advanced VR environment footage, this process was done with black and white film that would put color back in, giving that weird look to the footage. It's the same idea done to adding color to old shows. It did make it look cool, but it pushed the show's budget over $1.5 million an episode, easily on par with Star Trek episodes, and VR5 never looked like Star Trek. It did get better as it went along, finding that good blend to the cop and VR elements, a good twist at the end, reduced the word salad. It also helped they got more people to help Sydney. Anthony Head replaced Will Patton as the lead of the committee organization, which probably helped him get picked for Buffy 2 years later. There was an overall arc to the show. Sydney mainly helped find the truth about people, murders, assassins, personality problems, which also helped herself. She slowly overcame those issues, plus dealing with people within the committee attempting to kidnap her, finding out information from them, as well as Duncan joining in with the VR. The committee was messed up, to the point of even finding out that Oliver, Anthony Head's character, was almost assassinated by them, just like Frank was, as well as she found out that the car crash of her father and sister was a lie. It was a massive cover-up done by her own father. Her dead sister was found alive near the end, and Joseph did all of this to protect her from joining the committee. The last thing that happened was Sydney's attempt to rescue her mother through VR5, an even higher plane of connection. The last few episodes got really intense. The betrayal of the committee, everyone got used, you wanted to know what would happen. I would have loved to have seen where they would have gone. Would Sydney ever reunite with her father? Would the show turn into VR crew versus the committee? They had lots of avenues for a second season. What's dumb? 3 episodes didn't air. They were skipped by Fox. Important backstory for her sister, Duncan's focus episode of him entering a parallel universe. We did get to see them in the US thanks to the Sci-Fi Channel, but that was like 4 years later. Yes, the earlier episodes were kind of slow, but they were there to drill in your head how everything worked. Yeah, it also followed a similar path like X-Files with the whole Mulder going against Smoking Man, but it still had some originality. The series was popular with a good chunk of people that they almost got a movie script off the ground, just like what happened with Firefly. What's ironic? Adam Baldwin was in the pilot. If you can track down the show, I say go for it. The only official release was on VHS back in 2000. Anything else is just bootlegs. Laurie Singer did good as the lead. Sydney had to get through a lot of issues with her life, then be thrown a curveball that her father and sister were alive. That's a lot of crap to go through for 20 years. Duncan, favorite character of mine, he's just that weird guy, doesn't care where he goes, hangs around with people he finds interesting, and just lives life. Kind of like Ted and Bill and Ted. Both Frank and Oliver committee advisors were the few people they could trust. When it counted the most, they gave up that power and helped out the VR crew. If this series was on any other network, it would have lasted longer. VR5 stings me more because this was the show that replaced Mantis after that got canceled. Then this one bites the dust. You really get fed up with Fox. Thanks for checking out the video. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and if you remember a movie or a show that's long been forgotten, good or bad, leave it as a suggestion below. I'm always on the lookout for obscured stuff.